have to do the really irritating introduction where it's like, "Hi guys," I hate doing that.
No, okay, it's fun. No, I thanks for having me on, man. I really appreciate it. It's always nice to talk about these things with people, and thanks for taking an interest and supporting us.
Yeah, same here. Just the fact that you've included me on so many things, and I'm just a small YouTuber. Like it's a dream come true for me doing all of this.
No, it's we're all small people in a big world, man. Like we're all just trying to connect with people. Um, that if the people that matter the most to us are the people that actually love our music and or want to, even if they don't love the music, they just want to give attention to it because they think it's worth giving attention to. Like we try to make a point to reach out to all those people because they usually get lost in the wash in the trade for fame. we're just trying to stay as wholesome as we can. So yeah.
All right. So starting off, for some reason, interviews do this by basically saying "Who are you," which is weird because they clicked on the video. So
No,
who are
no.
you?
Quite the contrary. A lot of people might click on this not knowing who the hell this is or what's going on. Like, who's this weird Canadian who's like woke up at 7 a.m. for an interview? But no, I'm Lucas. Lucas MacArthur. I'm the guitarist for Ontario, Canada metal band called Solaris, and Zach was kind enough to have me on his channel to shoot me a few questions and pick my brain about our new upcoming album, A Dance with Tragedy, and yeah, I don't know if there's a lot more relevant information up front. I feel like we'll get a lot into it throughout the questions, but yeah, it's our third album. We're super stoked about it, and we've been trying our best to promote it independently. Labelless is our third album, independent. Never had a label, so it's been a pretty cool adventure doing it on our own and forging our own path, and it's people like you that have allowed us to do that. So yeah, thank you.
All right. Well, let's get into it. So I'm going to start off from where our last interview kind of finished because that was just kind of after Darkest Days came out. So the first question I have is about the track off Darkest Days, Embers in the Rain. Why was that a bitch to write? And I want to thank Sarah for bringing that to my attention.
It wasn't, not for me anyway. No, I
comment where your Facebook page was mentioning what's your favorite track, and Embers in the Rain, like my favorite track, and someone wrote that, and Sarah responded saying you need to ask Lucas about it because it was a pain or something.
No, so I don't know the way that song went. I actually had a great time writing that song. I had one of those days where I can't remember what I was frustrated about, but it was just one of those. Went home. It was a rainy day. I just was like, you know what? I'm gonna see if I can crank out some music ideas. And I sat down on my guitar and I wrote that song in about 3 hours. There was tweaks that were made here and there, but I had a workable demo ready for Sarah, and she's like, "This is pretty cool." She really liked the track. The difficulty was that she just she at that point we hadn't worked together. You have to remember, like, going into Darkest Days was really truly the first album we wrote together, right? So Reunion was like an album that I wrote and kind of had on the table when she came, and Darkest Days was this album where she had to where we had to really learn how to work together, and she had a hard time writing lyrics to, like, the scarcity of the verses, like it's just guitar riffage and drums, and there's no like orchestral kind of choral line for her to kind of sink her teeth into, which was usually a good place for her to start. It's usually like her go-to place to start. It's like, okay, what are the instruments doing? What should my voice be doing with those instruments? But there was something about Embers that there's something about the pace of it. There's something about like the compactness and the tightness of the song that she was having a hard time figuring out what to do lyrically. So I actually did a lot of we did a lot of brainstorming together. So when she says it was a pain in the ass to write, it was actually pretty, like, from my perspective, I thought it was pretty smooth sailing. It was difficult compared to what we had done otherwise, because Darkest Days, most of the songs came out pretty much like whatever we demoed is pretty much what came out on the album. Embers in the Rain was the only one that she felt like, man, this song really has me stumped. I have no idea what to do. And I threw some ideas her way. I wrote the chorus and wrote this like, you know, that kind of like crowd pleasy kind of hooky chorus of like, you know, where are we now? And sent it to her, and she's like, okay, you know, like it could work. I'll do my best. But she didn't really have much. And then she kind of just filled the verses in with stuff that kind of suited those lyrics that I wrote. And it was really funny because when it was all said and done, I remember we got the masters, and she said, there's the album. It's done. Embers in the Rain is a stinker, but what can you do? And then we're like, you know what? It's okay, Sarah. It's all good. Like we did our best with it. But then we all listened to it, and it was our first time listening to her vocals, and we are all like, me, my drummer, and my bassist at the time, we're all like, this is like our favorite song on the album. Like, what the hell? And it was just one of those moments where she just had a completely different perception about it. And like, she thought it was really funny. And now it's one that we never skip playing live. It's always on our set list because it's just a fun, quick song. Yeah.
Yeah, interesting that was complicated because I thought it would have been one of the other tracks, which was The Longest on Darkest Days, where you both kind of co-wrote it together. I thought that would have been the hardest one to write.
In a way, that was a song that, you know, you're talking about Dear Savior. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Dear Savior was a song that Sarah actually wrote initially. When she brought it to me, it was the structure was lightly laid out, and she basically had all the melodies and the vocals written, and it was my job to take that and be like, do you want me to turn this into something like a metal ballad? And she said, yeah, I mean, we could try. And that was a pretty stressful song to write, though, because it was the first time she gave me something, and I had to like malleably work it into something that I thought she was going to like. And
yeah, that's why I thought
Dear
it'd be the
Savior.
hardest, because it's both of you working together.
Yeah, no, and you know what? Like, actually, we loved the experience. Like, it was just it's always difficult, no matter how primordial an idea is, and no matter how like in its baby stages it is, it's always difficult to kind of lend it to someone to see what they would do with it, because you see it change and you kind of get married to the way it sounds, and that's the biggest struggle. So we had a good time writing that one, all things considered, though. So yeah, we you would think that was one of the more difficult songs to write, and I would say it was, but it was more so difficult for me, whereas Sarah kind of already knew what her vocals were going to do. I think she only had to write one additional piece for that song behind the microphone when push came to shove. But you know, that I would say that was the most difficult song for me to write on guitar, and you know, all the other instruments. But Embers in the Rain was the one that she was like, I hate writing vocals to this.
Right.
But she obviously loves the album. She stands by every track. We're really proud of every track. We don't put a track on an album that we don't think is saying something. So
yeah. So since Darkest Days has obviously been out for a while now, since you're on to your third album, and I only interviewed you the second it like came out, it hadn't been out for long. How did that album do for you overall? Did it bring in a lot more fans at all?
oh yeah, yeah. I mean, don't get me wrong. Like when Reunion came out, we had no business garnering any attention. We didn't really have a fully established band. Reunion was just this album that we kind of just put out on the internet. We're like, well, hope you like it. And Sarah and I didn't even really have the full understanding that we were going to do another one. We were kind of like, it was really just a one-off, right? So at that time, there wasn't a whole whack of people looking for Solaris. So when we decided to do another album, we really gave it our all, and Darkest Days did pretty well. I mean, given our stature as like a smaller band in the big pond of the world, but yeah, no, like when we released our single for Limbo, it was like that was insane. That was kind of on our scale, that was lightning in a bottle. Like, I think we got thousands of views in days. It was like we were pretty hyped about it. We couldn't believe it was happening. We thought we were going to get, the usual few hundred views and like upon launch, but no, there was something about that song, man. Like I don't know if the algorithms just liked it, or the kind of people clicking on it, like just rewatched it a bunch of times. I don't know, but yeah, no, our Facebook page grew from like, I think we had like 350 followers, and then like within 3 months we had like 1,000 more. So yeah, like proportionately speaking, Darkest Days was a pretty cool
Successful.
album. Yeah,
Yeah. Well, that's good to
yeah,
hear. And Limbo is quite different. It's just such a fun song,
yeah.
just easy and good fun. So next question is: you've done 2 albums where you're the sole guitarist, but
Mhm.
you've brought another guy on, Troy.
Yep, yeah,
Why have you
my
decided to
boy.
do this? Yeah,
Sorry.
why have you decided to bring another guitarist in?
Um, so when we were just a four piece, and I was just doing my thing on guitar, there's obviously a lot of moments in our music that two guitars is better than one, but you know, you can get away with it live. You just play one of the pieces and bass line holds down the rhythm and whatnot. And but we were never really married to the idea of having another guitar player. Like it wasn't it. We were in a position where we weren't going to bring someone on unless we were like, we're missing out. Like this person would be perfect to join our family. Like personality wise was the biggest thing. Like he's a hilarious dude. I love hanging out with him. He's like he's the yin to my yang. And it was Nick, our old drummer's brother as well. And I don't know if you knew that, but yeah, Troy and our old drummer Nick are brothers. They're only a couple of years apart, and they were really, really tight friends. So Nick obviously was saying like, hey, if you need another guitar player, like my brother Troy, so he's an incredible player. I think he just needs like a project to focus on. And I was like, cool. Well, and so what I did was I just kind of, and I've told Troy this, it's really funny. I just kind of told Nick, I was like, well, here, give him the first album and just say like, hey man, this is the new band I'm in, and then don't say anything. Just let him listen to it. And if he just kind of listens and goes meh, then it's not meant to be. I don't want to bring someone on with the band that's not passionate about this stuff. But then right around when we started doing Darkest Days, I remember I was at a party, one of Nick's birthday parties, and Troy was there, and I'd met him briefly a couple times, but I was like, hey man, how's it going? Good to see you. And he's like, oh, good to see you too. And we had just gotten our like first draft of Limbo back. So it was kind of like, you know, it was on one of our YouTube channels, like unlisted, so that we can kind of like nitpick it and edit it and stuff. And he was like, throw that shit up on the screen. And I was like, okay. So we casted the TV at the party just to show some people. And I think that was the moment Troy's like, I really like what these guys are doing. And then and then right around when we were releasing Darkest Days, we were doing pretty good. And he reached out to me and said, hey man, so you want to make this happen? And I said, yeah, man, let's. Yeah. So I threw him like 4 tunes to audition and nailed all of them. And yeah, in ways I respect him as a guitar player, man. He like that's ultimately the answer why we brought him on. I respect him so much. He's got a hilarious work ethic. And by hilarious, I mean like you're always laughing when you're doing shit, because whether it's him just being just obnoxiously frustrated and just saying the funniest shit, or he's just workhorsing and just focused, and he's just made things happen with us behind the scenes that we've never would have been able to. Like our one of our music videos yet to come out is like all because of his vision and his hard work, and we're so excited to have him on board. And on top of that, live we can now play dual guitar parts, which is really fun. People always like that, like Dragon Forcey kind of stuff, you know.
Yeah.
People like guitar harmonies, and I don't blame them. They're really fun to watch. They're really fun to play. So yeah,
You can
Troy, it was just one of those situations where he was there and we all sat down. Me and Nick and Sarah were all pretty much the decision makers. Mark was at the time, our bassist Mark was just kind of like, yeah, I'm cool with it. And but we all had a really long discussion, and I remember telling Sarah, because Sarah's like, I kind of like don't want to fix what's not broken. I don't know, like, should we? And I said, I think that if we were ever going to bring on another guitar player, I think we'd be missing our opportunity right now. I think he's a perfect fit, and he has been. Like, my gut was just like, we should bring him on. And then, you know, I think he would bring a lot, and he has. Like I don't know if you've seen our most recent Guiding Light video, but he's an excellent guitar player. He's such a I I'm trying to put him on more and more solos, and I can only squeeze so much out of him before he's just like, eh. but yeah, maybe the next album, maybe he'll be the lead guitar player on the next album. Who knows? I can take a break and just let him do all the hard work.
Well, I guess I'll seeing that you made that point, I'll skip a few questions just to go on to this one.
Okay.
So Troy has obviously done more than I expected, because I did mention I came to you when you announced that he was there, and I was like, is he just rhythm, or are you doing co-lead, or is he taking over lead from you? And you said at the time he was pretty much just rhythm. But then obviously seeing
Yeah.
the Guided Light video, we've seen that you're doing the solos back to back.
Yeah.
And I think even listening to the album, so spoilers everyone, I've actually heard the thing. I think there is actually more solos from him, but I don't think it's like every single track.
There are exactly 2 tracks on the new album where he's contributed guitar solo, and
There was another
so
one.
yeah, there's 2 tracks, Guiding Light, and then there's one other one. Like, which one off the top of my head?
Not the keeper, is
Oh,
it?
it's one that we'll talk about later. So yeah, no, so we don't really like to. We've never really labeled, oh, like he plays strictly rhythms and I play strictly leads. Like at the end of the day, we find that's a really weird box to color ourselves into. Like him and I both have like this really fun approach towards each other where like we're very humble. We were both kind of like outclassed by one another in different ways. I think that there's certain things that he can do on the instrument that just make me so envious, and things that he can think of that make me so mad. But then he'll look at stuff that I'm doing and he's just like, well, that's why I'm not the lead player. And I'm like, well, and the thing is, like, we have such like a healthy respect for one another's playing, and that's why we work so well together. And so it's more so just like not forcing each other to be in any particular role. Um, it's just kind of like allowing us to play where we're supposed to play. And there were moments on this album where I said, "Hey, do you think you could put something here?" And he said, "I don't think I need to. Like, I think it's good." And I'm like, "Okay, like so." So there were moments like that. So like when like for example, if we print the booklet, like Troy's not going to be rhythm guitar and I'm going to be lead guitar. Like we're just guitars. Like like we contribute a lot. And the only thing I'll add about that, I think, for now, is that as far as recording goes, I will say that most of the guitars, except for his solos, were performed. All of them were performed by me on the album. We had a discussion early on. I said, "Do you want to learn the songs now and then like tighten them up and then record them with me, or do you want to just leave it to me?" And we decided early on. And this is another thing about Troy that I love. He's truly like whatever's best for the project. And he truly believed, he's like, I don't think I can play these songs as well as you can, at least at this point. So I think you should record all the guitars and all the harmonies and stuff, and I'll just add in the stuff that I absolutely have to play. And I said, okay. And so that's the way this album went. And but he is more than capable of playing everything I've written. He is an absolute monster of a learner. I swear to God, I'll write like the most complicated crap I've ever done, and he'll have it all down, an entire song in like an hour. I'm like, he's just an incredible player. I can't say enough good things about Troy. Yeah.
Yeah, with that Guiding Light, your two different style of solos, I think it definitely brings a lot to the table, because you're two different individuals and everything. And I think it really gives a good kind of contrast between the two. So I think it's incredible. And going forward, I'd love to see, just more, just always more, 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 more. So,
there's lots. And you know what? That was the thing is, our live game has been stepped up because of that too. There are things on our old stuff that we have found that, you know, like that part only had one guitar in it because we only had one guitar player at the time, but then we'll be jamming in the room and we'll just have some fun and we'll dink around with like a part. Like I think there's a solo in Embers, the solo in Embers in the Rain, that last flurry of notes, we've created like a dual guitar harmony live with it, and it's just the coolest, and like everyone loves it. And it's like, so yeah, just having another guitar player on board just in general just opens up a lot of options. The only boundary that you ever are going to encounter is whether or not that person is a good personality to work with, whether you're compatible with them, and whether you guys can stay on the same page. And but yeah, like Troy and I are two peas in a pod. We really work well together. So yeah.
Right. So going into this album, Dance with Tragedy, this album seems way bigger than what you've previously done. So going into the album, what were the things you wanted to achieve going into this thing?
That's actually a tough question. There wasn't really a desire to do anything else other than just try to outdo the other ones, right? You know, like you always want to try to outdo the last album you did, in the hopes that that just pushes you to get better. And I can safely say that we have done that. I mean, people might like the first two albums out of like a sense of familiarity more than this one. I don't know. We'll
Doesn't
see.
make sense.
But this album is our best work to date. Like it
I
has
agree.
more aggression. Everything, we made sure that everything people loved about Solaris beforehand is still there, just amplified. Like it, like so there. It's like on an objective level, it's just we've just done things on this album and expanded our ideas and conceptually like worked out things that are even bigger than we've ever done before. So yeah, I'm sorry, like is that kind of answer the question? I'm kind of forgotten the wording of your question there. It's like I think it was like what we set out to do, like what we were hoping
Yeah,
to do.
just listening to the singles and then me going and listening to the album now. My thought was just you went into this thing just like our lives depend on this. This has to be the greatest thing we've ever done because it is so vastly improved over the previous two. Previous two albums still great. I'm not shitting on them, but
No, I
this
get it.
is
It's all good.
out of the world. Like it's not
Yeah,
incremental to me. It's just like years and years and years, and that is this album for you guys.
yeah, yeah.
So I
This
just
is definitely our like. This one. The only thing that scares the shit out of me on this album is, are we going to be able to go beyond this? Like, are we going? Like, how do we go bigger from here?
yeah, you've really
How,
for this album.
we have ideas. You know, we've already like that's the nature of it. We've already started working on the fourth. Like that's the nature of how it always goes. Things are in a constant cycle of creation. In the same way, like I think um, the fourth track on this new album was actually, I think it was The Wandering. That track was actually written before we even released Darkest Days. You know, like so this stuff is constantly in a cycle of reinvention, and we'll see though. We're all kind of entering different life stages right now, and we'll see how like Solaris looks going forward, because we're all getting older and we're all doing big boy stuff and starting families and stuff like that. So yeah. Yeah, so yeah, we just set out to make a good record. Honestly, we did. We just wanted to write something that was better than our last, and that was kind of our measuring point. We always There was a few songs where, you know, Sarah and I would go back and forth and say, look, like this is pretty good, but it sounds like we could have put this on Darkest Days and it would have just kind of even keeled in there. Let's put stuff on there where people are like, this belongs on a different album altogether, because it just sounds different. It feels different. The energy is bigger. And yeah, and it's a lot more technically challenging. Not on like a versatility sense, like a playing sense, but just on a songwriting perspective, this one really tried some wacky shit, and I thought it paid off in dividends. So
Yeah, I concur to everything he just said. I agree for all of them aspects. So, with the size and scope of this album, even though you just went into it with the mindset of let's just do better than our previous works, because it is so much bigger and so much more technical and grand and epic, what was the process like compared to your previous two albums? Did it take longer to do this? Was it a lot harder to make this album? Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah, no. This was a from the get-go, Sarah and I were the ones that like collaboratively put this album together. Just to kind of give like the context of how it all got laid down. I essentially wrote the the guitars, the drums, and all that stuff, like the demos. I wrote everything up front and basically just sent Sarah a big package a long time ago. Like this was a long process. And the thing is, I think we were ready to jump feet first into it. But then, that pesky global pandemic hit us all and just put a huge monkey wrench in everything. So there was a lot of things about this album that were not just different, but more difficult. Like for one, normally I would just drive up to my producer's place for a weekend and we would just crank out all the guitars. But just early on in the pandemic, given how uncomfortable and uncertain everyone was about what we were dealing with, I think the whole world felt the same way. I developed the method of, well, how about I record all the stuff myself and I send you the tracks? And he said, you can try that. Yeah. He's like, I think you could do it. And I said, okay. So this whole album was recorded at home by me. And then literally just packaged and sent to my producer, which was really good. And he handled all the vocal layering and all the vocal recording on his end later in the process. And so that was kind of a challenge. On a creative level, it was very challenging. Sarah and I from the get-go decided that we wanted to do something bigger. She was hearing it in the demos. Like the demos are always like these horrible sounding samples and the orchestral stuff sounds like farts and but she gets the idea of what I'm going for. And early on, she noticed, she's like, this is like next level stuff. And she was like, I need to be as next level as these songs are. And if there was something off, she would tell me like, I think you should put something here. And, I think you should better this part. And I'd be like, okay. And then we would have like back and forths. But then naturally in that process, there's a lot of room for disagreement, right? There's a lot of room for, the clash of ideas
Yeah.
but we're both really like the thing about Sarah and I is that we're both pretty level-headed people and like we're both very like emotionally attached to our ideas, so it that's what's difficult about it. But we're never disrespectful. We always hear each other out, we always reason it out, and we always trust each other at the end of the day. But this album, because we decided we were going to push the boundaries further than we ever have before, we from the get-go said this is going to probably be an uncomfortable process because we've never worked together like this before. So it was a learning experience for us. But I'm glad to say that we came out the other end both equally stoked about this album, and we're excited about what we're going to do in the future. You know what I mean? Like, so we learned a lot about how to communicate ideas. We learned about how long to sit on ideas before we like throw our knee-jerk reactions at each other, and like we learned how to just kind of like listen to a track in the mindset of like, okay, I'm going to listen to it the way I want to listen to it, but then immediately listen to it again. I'm going to listen to it and try to figure out where they were coming from and see if there's ideas we liked. We can keep things that pick and choosing our battles, the hills to die on. So this was a tough album to make, but that's why I think the quality went way higher than it ever has, because we had those checks in place.
Yeah. And you kind of covered on it as well, which was something I was going to ask. Obviously, Reunion was written by yourself. Darkest Days was you and Sarah. So I was going to mention how was the writing for this, but I think you kind of already established that by saying you did the musical aspect, and then Sarah just kind of did the voice and lyrics.
Well, in a very, very quick nutshell, just so like I can paint a very concise picture. Reunion, I wrote basically the skeleton, like the guitars and the drums with a session drummer. and then but the lyrics and melodies, obviously I didn't want to bring a singer on and be like, there, just write a whole album in like 2 months. Like, so I wrote all that stuff there. Darkest Days was collaborative in the sense that like Sarah, it was an album where Sarah and I both had songs. Like I think she had like 4 songs that she's like, I really like, I want to put these on an album. And then I was like, sweet. And then I wrote like 6 or 7 of them. And then the one being kind of the crossover. So there wasn't like a lot of Darkest Days literally just kind of like put pieces together. It kind of more felt like, oh, okay, like I have lyrics but without a song. And I'm like, well, I have a song without lyrics. And then we put them together and they worked. Like we kind of got lucky in that sense. This one was, I wrote music. There was originally a tune that Sarah was going to put on there, but we decided it was probably going to be better used elsewhere. Actually, she made that call. But so she just wanted this album to kind of like stand as its own thing. She said, like, you've written all the music. It sounds really consistent and concise and conceptual, and everything kind of blends together. And the real trick to this album was opening the gates of criticism for each other. Like that was the biggest thing. Like the last 2 albums, we got away with murder. Like as musicians and writers, like it was unreal how little disagreement we had over the first 2 albums. Like we literally didn't argue about a single thing. She would send something to me, I'm like, that's awesome. And I'd send something to her. She's like, that's amazing. But this album was the one where we were like, okay, enough of that shit. Like, let's really like promise to push each other. Cause I think the excitement of writing music together kind of overrides our ability to see where things could be improved sometimes. And we're very quick to just be like, oh my God, that's so cool. I'm so excited to release this with you. And so this time we really promised each other that we were going to push, really, really, really put our foot down and just say, okay, I think this could be a lot better. And I think we pushed each other to new limits. Yeah.
Yeah. So the next point, which we discussed before starting the interview, which is something I find funny looking back on now, which is you dropped the first song, and the first thing I was mentioning was Sarah's voice is so much better, and the comments all saying this is phenomenal, the sound of her voice. Second song drops again, absolutely phenomenal. I get the album, I'm just like, wow, her voice is just bare bone basic compared to where she's taking this in the album. Like it's incredible.
And you know what? Had we known,
my God,
how the final tracks were going to turn out, we might have picked some different tunes. But we're really proud of all of our tunes. Like yeah, you're right. These 2 singles really are a tip of the iceberg of what she can do. She does things in this album that, like, we've shared. Like close friends will be kind of in a car with us, and we'll be like, "Oh, check out this new song we're putting together." And there have been moments where people have actually been like, is that Sarah? And we're like, yeah. Like, and they're like, holy shit. She's hitting registers she's never done before. Yeah. Like she is like, no, it genuinely is giving me goosebumps right now. Like she is such an amazing vocalist, and she just keeps getting better and better. And she keeps pulling out tricks that we didn't know she could do. And she's just super modest. Like that's the other thing about her, is that she is not at all arrogant about what she can do. She's just very laid back. And then she's just like, oh yeah, like I just tried this thing on this song, and we're all like pissed because we're like, well, why did it take 3 albums for you to tell us that you could do like there's a couple moments in the album where she does like high operatic vocals, and you're like, holy shit. Like yeah, so
yeah, that's the thing I was going to mention. It's just like the first 2 albums, it's like barely touching on just the range she has, and then it comes to this album, she's blowing out everything she knows.
Yeah, no, she's she's incredible in this album. And the one good thing about that, it was there's always room to improve, and you can see that incline over the albums, which is nice. I thought Darkest Days still had like a beautiful amount of range to it, and but this album is just like, if the range was like this on Darkest Days, this one's like I have nothing but great things to say about Sarah's capabilities and her propensity to be such a professional and work her way towards those accomplishments. Like she is just absolutely yeah, she just blows me away every time. Every time. Yep.
Yeah, so all the people who have heard these two songs saying her voice is absolutely incredible, you got no idea what
They're
you're
in for a treat. Yeah, they're really in for a treat. Yeah.
no clue. Like
Yeah.
she's symphonic, operatic, as you mentioned. Every single thing full of emotion. She pays attention to everything. It's just so well performed. Also, the mix as well, I think, has drastically improved the mix of this album over the Darkest Days. At least I think it has.
Yeah, that gets better. Everything gets better, right? Like everything. The thing is we've stuck with our same producer. We decided to go with Sean again because he just can't be beat. And that has its merits too, right? Like working with the same producer for 3 albums now. He has learned how to, like, every album he's done has been an experience. Reunion sounded pretty good. Darkest Days sounded really good. As he moves along, he kind of comes up with ideas of like, oh, maybe I'll push this, maybe I'll push this in this song or this album. And like, I know, like, I know that he likes doing our music, and he's like, I know how to make these guys sound a little better than they did last time. So, in a way, we've kind of like invested a lot of eggs in that basket, because now we have a producer that knows us so intimately well that I can literally send him all our stuff and just know that he's going to send me something incredible sounding. And then, there was a lot of like technical things that we did too, like in the recording of this album that made it sound fuller. Like we changed our approach to how we layered Sarah's vocals, and we changed our approach to how we layered the guitars, and like obviously the orchestral stuff was obviously going to sound a little different because it was all me this time, just trying to put it all together. So no, like you can definitely tell that this album sounds grander and bigger than the previous two.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, the mix has improved overall. The orchestral symphonic element is turned way up and sounds way better and fuller. And Sarah's range, we mentioned, absolutely epic. And I do believe that she's got some effects. You say there's some layering on her voice, which I thought there was at times.
yeah,
So you're doing all sorts of things and tricks. It's incredible.
Little things.
You got a new drummer as well, which you mentioned to me before the interview and what he brought. So you want to obviously say what he's brought to the album.
Well, yeah, we have a new. So yeah, I guess you know what. With your permission, I'm going to kind of freestyle this question, because like I feel like to properly answer it, we have to kind of take it right back to 2019, the end of 2019 and the beginning of 2020, the beginning of this whole mess. So we had a quartet of us. Obviously, it was me, Sarah, Nick, and Mark. Nick being on drums, Mark being on bass. That was kind of our quartet for a while. Then we brought on Troy, and then played a few shows with him. Towards the end of 2019, Nick and Mark were both kind of like moving a life path where they were going to end up moving away from London, significantly away from London, where they weren't going to be a part of the band anymore. But it was all lovingly understood and everything. So we started 2020 thinking like, no problem. Like we'll get through this. We'll figure this out. We still got 3 members. We're all fully committed. We'll find replacements. We had people in mind that we wanted to audition already. But we ended up running into that wall that is COVID-19, right? Like we just the whole world kind of came to a sudden stop. So that really put things back in schedule. And so regardless, we wrote it out for a few months, and we started auditioning new members. We obviously needed a new bassist and a new drummer, and Chris DeMello, the fellow Londonite. I'd seen him play at a few local shows with like bands here and there that were, just either doing like original material, or they were doing covers of like Alexis on Fire and stuff like that. And but I never saw him in the metal seat, but I could tell by the way he played. I'm like, he was one of those drummers that would be playing like a cover of like a classic rock song, and he would just throw like insane double kick in there, because he's one of those drummers that you could tell was sitting behind the kit and was just frustratedly like holding back And I'm like, this guy, I was like, this guy's a metal drummer, like through and through. Like he wants to like be that guy that, and he was one of the first people I thought of when Nick formally told us that he was going to be moving away closer to family, and he was one of the first people I thought of. And oddly enough, we kind of just let it ride out for a bit before we actually started the audition process. We weren't sure when we were going to get it started. And he actually reached out to me. He's like, hey, man, I don't know if this is in bad taste, but I'm very interested in auditioning for Solaris. And I said, and I messaged him back. I said, I'll let you know a little secret, man. I was going to reach out to you. And he was like, yeah. And it was a tough audition process for him, though. I will say, like, we put him through the ringer because we really needed to make sure that we knew we wanted to do better things. We knew we wanted someone who could like up the speed game and like, you know, have the capabilities present needed, and like, which is no way, shape, or form shade on Nick. Nick is a phenomenal drummer. Like he was so good. So Chris came in, and I think honestly, I feel bad for the guy. I think we put him through like 5 or 6 songs in 3 different audition processes. He just had to learn so much and play so much and like take critique really well. And we were like, okay, you know, like this is kind of what we would expect. This, and he took it like a champ. And unbeknownst to us, Nick actually met up with him prior, and Nick is he's such an open-hearted guy. He was just like, look, like I want you to succeed with this. And he's like, these are the perks of being in this band. He's like, it's the most rewarding experience you'll ever have. But the thing is, like, they're the kind of people, like, no hard feelings. They're gonna push you. They're gonna see if like you can do this. And but he told them, he's like, if they keep asking you back to like learn something else and stuff, he's like, that's a good thing. And it was like we kept bringing him back because we were like, there was just things that were like we weren't sure if he could do or not, but we really desperately wanted him to be able to do it, and he could. It's just, you know, we just had to work out the kinks. Anyway, so it was a no-brainer. We brought Chris on board. There were like 2 other drummers that I had considered, but Chris was primarily the one that we were like, you know, like that we put all our eggs in the basket. And then Dan came as our bassist, and he's just, we knew him just he frequented our rehearsal space a lot. He's also a drummer, so like, and a guitar player, so he's like a multi-instrumentalist. And he would take lessons from our old drummer and stuff. So we met through him, and he's just the sweetest personality. He's just a bro, just a bud. And we were like, and we straight up were just like, do you want to join our band, man? Like we could really use like that personality in our band. And he's like, absolutely. And he was equally excited. So yeah, so that's kind of how we brought our new members on. It was really tough through COVID, but
I imagine,
you know, you make do.
Yeah, the drums are phenomenal. The bass is good as well. Like the second single, Guiding Light, the bass line in that is really good and strong. So just fantastic. So the last track on the album is pretty long, pretty much clocking in 9 minutes. So
it wasn't intended to be that way, man.
It wasn't, because I was going to mention, like, did you want
that
to
song took on a life of its own? So, fun fact, like I don't want to spoil too much about the album, but, and you probably wouldn't notice this on a first listen or like skimming through the album, but the last 3 tracks on the album are kind of one mega song. They kind of blend into one another very, very subtly. And it starts with like a very, very calm ballad that orchestrally built, and it introduces some musical ideas that go into the next song. And then the next song kind of amps the intensity up as like this really big, like fast, harsh hitting, like epic. And then it fades into the last track, which is that song really ended up being the grandest song on the album. Like it's not technically challenging, it's not anything, but it's just, when we sat down to like when I sat down to write it, it was originally like 4 minutes, but there were just parts where it was like, I think jumping into this is too abrupt, and it's like, okay, maybe we put another part here. And then And then that sparked ideas. I'm like, man, like, what if we did this? And like, oh, what if we brought this idea back from this? Like, I don't know if like eagle-eyed listeners are gonna hear this, but like like there's a consistent through line of one particular melody that's introduced right at the beginning of the album. That the guitar lead right at the beginning of the album pokes his head up towards the end a couple times throughout the last couple songs. It's kind of like this thematic element of bringing it full circle. As a matter of fact, if you were to listen to the album on repeat, you would probably hear that same melody begin and end the album as kind of like a poetic bow that we wrapped up on it. So yeah, the last song is pretty fucking, yeah, it took on a life of its own. And then it got to the point where I had too many ideas. And we had to shrink it down. But then I was like, well, actually, these ideas could work in a different song, which became its predecessor in the album, Everbound. And so basically, Everbound and the song you're referring to, This Journey That Yet Remains, they were kind of written side by side as two like the same conceptual ideas, but explored in vastly different ways. So yeah, the way that album ended was incredibly unintended. Like we didn't set out being like, oh, we want to write a big long epic song. Like we didn't. It just kept growing, and we didn't want to have a 14-minute song on the album, so we kind of like separated the ideas and created two separate tunes, and then that inspired the acoustic piece that came prior to that. So so when push came to shove at the end, we decided that we wanted to kind of like very subtly blend them together at the end of the album to create this like beginning to end. I think it's like a 16 to 18 minute stretch of like all of these songs are kind of like one big story. And funny enough, you might get a kick out of this knowing the history you do about the last two albums. This album does harken back to Reunion a lot. I don't want to go into too much detail because we kind of want this album to kind of be its own thing. We want it to be, we don't want to lock it down as like a conceptual thing in people's minds because it is and it isn't. But we thought it would be really cool to write like a mirror story to Reunion with this album. And it's kind of written from the perspective of the female protagonist part from Reunion. Reunion kind of focused on the struggles of those left behind in the world who's lost their loved ones. We thought, what if we wrote like the mirror side of like someone trying to do a journey of self-discovery on the other side of that two-way mirror? And what if we ended this album the same way we ended the first one, which is a reunion of the two ideals? And we thought it'd be really cool to kind of just bring that back. You'll probably hear that in the lyrics now that I've kind of put that idea in your head a little more. But yeah, so like those last three songs were kind of like a microcosm of the other side of that story. And which might be evident in the title too. "This Journey That Yet Remains" is an actual lyric from a monologue in our first album. That's how we named that song. So yeah, there's a song in our first album, "Ethereal Tears," that has a little monologue, and I can't remember exactly how it goes at this point, but our guest monologue is, she says, "Paint the pictures and write the stories and live your life in this journey that yet remains." And we were like, that's a pretty perfect album or song title for this. So yeah, anyway, I'll hand it back to you. I'm sure you got a couple more questions, but yeah.
I did pick up on a few of the things you said. Like I was wondering if the album was a concept, but I wasn't sure about it. And then there were, as you said, there is some rhythms that tie to others. I did think some melodies were repeating and I'd heard them before, but again, I was skipping, so I wasn't too sure, but I thought I heard things before. So I did kind of pick up on it a little.
It was purely intentional that way. We really did set out to do that. I love doing that. I love reintroducing ideas. I'm a big fan of bands like Dream Theater and like all those like prog bands that will do conceptual pieces that kind of, begin and end in like poetic harmony. And I've always loved that. I've always felt like it's a great storytelling method in a day and age where the album format is all but dead. It's like my way of trying to keep it alive because I love it. And so, yeah.
Yeah, there's an album I listen to by a different band that starts the album with a melody and finishes the same way. But it's
Yeah.
the album over 2 hours, so it's amazing after that 2 hour journey to bring it back
Yep.
round again. Absolutely
Yeah.
incredible.
It's the Wizard of Oz effect, right? Where like that's that perfect storytelling where it's like you start in Kansas and it's all bleak and black and white, but then by the time you get back, everything's in color, and it's like you begin where you end the journey where you began it, but everything's different now, right? And yeah. You heard it here, folks. Wizard of Oz was the inspiration for this album.
Right. So don't know how I'm going to mention it, but you have a special guest on this album.
Yes, we do.
So,
and I appreciate you keeping it under wraps.
Yeah, I'm not going to mention anything else besides you have a special guest, and then I'll just leave it to you to just fill in what you want.
Thanks. No, right. Yeah, we have a special guest vocalist on one of our tracks that we reached out to them early on in the process and asked if we presented them a demo, and they said, yeah, let's do this. And I guess vocalists we don't think we have any business having the pleasure to work with, but we did, and we were so happy with it. I don't want to say too much. It's very hard to talk about without getting excited. But what I will say is that people should expect to find out who that was very, very soon. I'm talking like matter of like weeks. Like we are really excited about it. We had such a blast working with them, and the song is just, if nothing else, amped up the intensity of this album. That song did. It was quite a treat to see how that one turned out.
Yeah, short good placement for the song as well as I think being in the middle of the album.
Mm-hmm.
So I think good placement for that. It's a name everyone should know as well. It's a big name, I think.
Yes. Yeah. If you're a metalhead and you don't know who this person is, you've probably been living under a rock.
Yeah, it's not even my style, but even I know who this person is.
Yeah. So yeah, I think that's all we can say about it without getting really, really spoilery. But yeah,
but it's very
appreciate
different.
Everyone's patience with that.
Yeah. So another thing I noticed listening through the album is you seem to have a mix of genres. At least I personally feel so. A great thing I really love about Solaris compared to so many other bands is every single song you always start with doing lead work instead of just a basic riff. And then even in your verses, you're doing all sorts of technical stuff, which is kind of like power metal style. But then the album's got the symphonic elements, kind of like Nightwish. And then you got kind of proggy elements because the songs never seem to really kind of repeat a similar pattern to some amount. Were these ideas you had going in to kind of mix all these different kind of things together?
Yeah, I can't really like speak much to how we start our songs off. They get like I just start the songs off with whatever the ideas are. I mean, at the end of the day, the song, every band has an artist that's primarily the one that brings the musical ideas to the table. In that case, it's me in Solaris, and guitar players are going to guitar player, like so yeah. I mean, there's a couple songs on this album that like there's one that I think, pretty just big chordal work and stuff. But the best way to say it is like I write music in a way where I try to just put what's needed where it's needed. And I always I can't stand music where like right off the hop you can listen to it and just the intro is just like I'm already bored. Like like we live in such a huge saturated market of music, and it's so hard to capture people's imagination. So the least you can do is like make the beginning of a song unique, make something earwormy, something that you can hum, like, or at the very least, if they're not going to remember it, like blow the roof off the place. Like Shades of Truth, our first single, like that song just like swells and then just right off to the races, just like fucking riff. It's just like a riff fest. That the intro to that song might be the most challenging thing to play on this album, but yeah, there's like just hundreds of notes whipping by, and it's not a guitar solo. It's just it is a just extended intro lick, and yeah, you are right though. Like that is one thing I love about symphonic metal. I love the vocal beauty of it. I love the elegance that it seems to bring to the table. But that was one thing I was always frustrated with the genre about, and there were things about every genre that frustrated me growing up. Like I love power metal, but I got exhausted by it really quick because it just felt like, how much can you just listen to like, 2 and 4 double kick with like just like guitar widdly woos before it's just like, I feel like it's a different song, but it's the same idea over and over and over again. And then with symphonic metal, it was like, there was these grand orchestral ideas, but as a guitar player sitting there going like, man, like, there's nothing going on there. And so Solaris was kind of like a response to that, where I just was like, you know what, like, why the fuck can't we just have like an aggressive sounding metal band that if you were to put like a lot of our songs, like you could put like a really harsh male vocalist in front of it and it would work just as well. But it's like, why can't we have that beautiful element of symphonic metal in front of that? And that kind of harkens back to your first question about Embers in the Rain. Like maybe that's why Sarah had a hard time writing vocals to that, because it is out of the ordinary. It is not something that a lot of bands do, but I think bands are starting to catch on to it. There's a few bands, like obviously I'm gonna name drop Borealis. They do it better than anyone in my opinion. They are just an incredible band, incredible friends. And while they don't have like a female vocalist, and Matt definitely brings like that harsh baritone vibe to the music, they do a really great job of like keeping like that guitar riffage like pumping while having like that kind of energy behind it. Like that's still that kind of like proggy symphonic metal kind of vibe. Yep. Another band that I think does it really well, especially in their latest album, is Seven Spires. Their Gods of Debauchery album, pretty neat. They have like a really cool moments in that album that kind of do the same thing, just keeps the energy up. And yeah, there's a lot of bands out there that are starting to kind of do it that way. But this album, like I really wanted to make it aggressive. I only wanted to like kind of let things breathe when they really needed to. And but I think The Keeper, there's a song on our new album called The Keeper, is like the best example of how you can write something so aggressive, but still just have the most subtle, beautiful vocals over it. And like that song in particular, like that one was written to be like a live banger. Like, like there's a part in that song where there's a build up, and then when it slams, it's like you can see the walls of people crashing into each other. Like, but it also has the most beautiful vocals Sarah's ever produced, in my opinion. So it's like, I like that about Solaris. It's where we sit. It's where our comfort zone is. We love writing music that captures the intensity, but the beauty of life. Like you can't have one without the other.
Yeah, it's kind of amazing everything you just said there, because people who follow my channel and whenever I review albums and constantly critique them, I always say things which basically what you've just said about bands and following the same thing. I say it all the time. When it comes to power metal, it's always fast. They're always singing about knights or slaying a dragon or something, and I'm fed up of it. And then orchestral metal, it sounds great and symphonic and big. But whenever it comes to a verse, the guitars are usually completely out of it altogether. They're not doing anything, even though it still sounds big and epic. Guitar-wise, it isn't. If it's a female-led symphonic, it really definitely doesn't have heavy guitars, because whenever there's a female, for some reason, metal thinks you can't do heavy guitar stuff. So it's the thing with Solaris. Why I really like it is the fact that you've got all the aggression, the speed, and everything, yet have the strong female vocals that don't have to basically cut you guys out because she's a female. Don't understand it. Doesn't make any sense. You've got all the power metal and symphonic nature, the heaviness, and you also know when to slow down and just let things breathe. A lot of bands just don't seem to be able to do this and just kind of follow this simple kind of formula, do the simple foundation. But especially with this album, you go to so many different elements. The songwriting is vastly improved, which is something I want to cover. A lot of songs, it's you start with your intro, you go to your verse, chorus, and kind of just end it. As for there is a fair few songs on this album where you don't really ever kind of repeat a similar kind of thing, like Guiding Light. That's the first one that showed it, where the first verse nothing like the second one, completely
Nope.
different. The
Yep.
song just keeps shifting.
The chorus is the only thing that's consistent through the whole song. Yeah.
That's it. And you
That's
have
the way
many
we've
songs.
always written, though, right? Like, you know, we've like I could harken back to plenty of songs off our first and second album that do the same thing. That's just like that's a sentiment of my doing. I've never really, I don't know. Sometimes you can get away with it. Like Limbo is a great example of a song that like the vocals are just so good. Like they're so catchy in that song that like just repeat what you did, just copy and paste that, and it works great. But yeah, Embers in the Rain is another one where it's just like the energy is fine where it is. Let's just get in and out in under 4 minutes and just freaking hammer this out. But yeah, there's a lot of songs in our discography that follow that structure, especially with verses. It's like I find verses are like the most exciting thing to write in a song because you can explore an idea in about 3 different ways. Usually I come up with about 4 or 5 ideas and I pick like the best 2 or 3, and I'm like, and that way you don't have to pick one and like sacrifice another. Like if you like 2 ideas, why not use both of them? Like there's no, like, throw the rule book out. Like you don't need to do it that way, right? So
I wish that's what the bands do because they just always follow this stupid rule book, and it's so annoying.
well, and you know what? To their credit, I'm gonna like vouch for some bands right now. Like it's not easy to do. That's the thing too. It's like I'm not sure of your musical background. Do you write music? Do you play an instrument or anything like that, or do you?
No, I just come across like I know what I'm talking
Right.
about, but I know shit. So that's it.
Okay. So like when you're actually sitting down and writing a song, like I can appreciate it. It doesn't exempt people from the critique at all. Like, you know, at the end of the day, if you do a thing, you do a thing. Doesn't matter why you did it. People don't care why you did it. They just know you did it. It's really hard to sit down and actually like figure out a way to explore the same idea but make it sound different. Um, I am That's always kind of come a little more naturally to me. So like I don't blame people for not doing it, but at the same time, you have to reap the downside of people are going to notice that, right? You know, like um there's like you know that goes back to like a lot of older bands that did that stuff. Like even Iron Maiden did that a lot, where they would just change things up, like just genius songwriting, where it's just like even if the guitars are doing the same thing, the vocals are like, if the vocal line is strong enough, like they can do something completely different. And like that's another thing in our new album, in particular, The Keeper. Again, this is kind of, I'm going to keep referencing that song because that is like
Right.
that was an accomplishment on our part. Like we all felt the same about that song. We were like, this song is like, this is what happens when everything just comes together and like in full force. The Keeper does that as well. Like there's the middle of that song is just it. We strip it right down, right to just guitars, and then we just build it back up, and then it goes through a guitar solo, and then right when you think it can't get any bigger, we do like a big guitar harmony with like a previous pre-chorus that we'd done earlier in the song that's like big and breathy, and then right when you think it's going to go into the chorus again, we do another pre-chorus that was again played, but then Sarah sings a completely different thing. And it just yeah, no, it's like that we just have a really good chemistry working together where we all kind of approach the music in the same way, where we're like, yeah, like the obvious thing is to go back to that. What if we didn't? Like, what if we tried something else? And if it doesn't work, that's fine. We can always fall back on the structure. But, like, we don't have to like wrap this up anytime soon. Let's spend another minute of music trying to like expand this idea. And I think the reward always outweighs the, like any downside to it. So yeah, I appreciate that people like you pick up on that, because that is something that a lot of people don't talk about, song structure wise, from an instrumental perspective. And it's something that we put, like musicians put a lot of detail and care and love into, and it kind of usually just gets swept under the rug as kind of like well, what's the singer doing, so yeah, I'm really happy that you pick up on that kind of stuff.
Yeah, believe me, when I come to review this thing, I will mention it every single time for every single song. I'm not going to forget it unless something goes over my head, because again, I don't know all music theory or something. I just think I do and make it out like I know what I'm talking about.
Like there's that saying, how's that saying go? It's like, you may have not noticed it, but your brain did, right? Like, people, they know what they don't know. They just don't necessarily have like the education or anything to put to it, so
yeah, so it's like I can hear it and I understand it, I just don't know what the fuck I'm actually hearing, but there is something
like, my
there.
brain likes that, and you just gotta, like, you might just have to spend a little more time explaining why your brain likes it, right? So
it sounds like I'm explaining it with knowledge of what I'm talking about, but actually not. Yeah, so the album covers, you did the previous two, didn't you? The album covers. Did you do the same for this one, or is it an artist?
Did.
You did this one as well?
I did. I'm a big DIY guy. I will be in an insane asylum soon. I take on a lot of work. This has been my baby since the beginning. It has been my passion project. It's been the thing that has brought so much joy to my life. And I was open to hiring another artist and stuff, but when I feel like I can do it myself, I'm blessed enough to have bandmates who trust me to do that. Troy always jokes. He's just like, I love being in a band where like my guitar player just shows up. He's like, hey guys, new album's done. But no, that wasn't meant to be like a humble brag or anything. I really do like, I love the involvement of just bringing a vision to life, because there's so much more to it than just yeah, no problem. Say hi. This is my father-in-law, Bob. Sorry about that. It's okay. He was nice enough to offer me his office to do this interview. So
for that,
my fiance and I are out of town, away from home, and staying with her folks for a couple of days. So yeah, lovely man, lovely human being, very supportive of our music. So where was I there?
I don't have a clue.
What was I saying there? Let's see if I can retrace the steps.
Album covers.
Album cover, yeah. The whole experience of putting an album together. I usually have a pretty big vision of like what I want to capture, and that goes all the way from guitar motifs to orchestral motifs, all the way to how the friggin' booklet is designed for the album. I mean, in a word, control freak, but I think that's
well, technically you are the creator, you're the one who makes all of this, so
it's an oversimplificating word, but that's essentially what it is. I like having my teeth sunk into that stuff. And the album art early actually was vastly different. It was the same kind of concept. We always wanted kind of like this, we kind of wanted to veer away from, we had a conversation early on that we wanted to like, do we want to make like a trilogy of albums that have like the same kind of theme, like different color scheme, different kind of thing going on, but the theme is like we have like this silhouetted person in like this white light, like the first two. And Sarah was actually the one that was kind of she said, I think we should like change it up. Like this album is different. And I said, okay. So we started playing with like brainstorm ideas. Originally, the album art was kind of just like a roughly put together piece of scrap that no one will ever see because it's just vastly inferior, completely different color scheme. And then I'd say about 5 months ago, we kind of went back to the drawing board and started kind of like looking at other color schemes, like how do we capture the intensity of this album. And so I just put that together and spent quite a while like tweaking it, and the band really liked it. And it just so happened that one of our tunes on the album is called "A Dance with Tragedy," and it also happens to be one of our favorite tracks on the album. So we were like, when push came to shove, we just were talking about what we liked about it, and it just "A Dance with Tragedy," like the image of like a dancer in the midst of the chaos of flame and darkness. It's just that was very befitting. So the whole vision kind of came together, in part because we had kind of a person behind the helm kind of keeping that through line consistent. So yeah, I did do the artwork again for this one. Yeah, I mean, going forward, I don't know, maybe a little, like maybe I bit off more than I can chew, who knows. But all I know is that it turned out great. I've got nothing but compliments from it. And actually the highest compliment I've gotten is that I've had a few friends being like, oh man, it's like really cool that you like actually reached out to an artist to do your artwork this time. I'm like, no, I did it. And they're like, oh. So it's like, it's kind of like a backhanded compliment accidentally, but it's funny.
Well, that's why I mentioned it, because I know you did the first two, but this third one is so much better. But that's the way it has been, like a reunion. If you look at the album, even the track list, it's all kind of a little blurry, and then you go to Darkest Days, and then all the text and them and the print and everything's a lot better. And then going this one, it's just
I honestly don't know why the first one turned out like I didn't do anything different resolution wise in the first album. I don't know why things were like weird and blurry. I don't know if it was something I was doing, or I honestly don't know. But which is another reason why maybe I shouldn't be doing it. But yeah, I think I think like the whole consistent theme here is you're just like, oh man, like this one just seemed to be so much better. It's like, yeah, it's like, the more we do this, the better we get at it, right? And
music of the album, you've stepped up in every single way and gone even above and beyond that. And then even with the album cover, you've massively improved.
It's a very visually striking image. It's very
it matches the vibe of the album, the theme of it and everything. It just really goes hand in hand together.
Yeah.
Although for people with OCD, I think you've pissed a few off, seeing that the title is off center, which I noticed.
You know what? That was, like what, like I don't know, like it's like I don't know what to say to that. Like
there's no reason why it's over in the corner.
Yeah, it's just in the corner, and we just wanted to do something different and try something different, and yeah, we're not, that's another thing that's kind of bothered us about bands. Like every freaking album they put out, it's just like the same logo and the same spot and the same kind of artwork every time, and it's just like why not just try to change it up, man? Like, and you know what, the kind of people who are going to nitpick over that kind of stuff, if that's going to keep them from listening to our music, then like all the power to them. We're not really that interested in that kind of nitpickiness, but yeah, it was just kind of a creative decision, and we played with the idea of putting it in the center, but we just thought it was a little, I don't know, we just liked the subtlety. There was like a classiness to just putting it off a little to the side and just letting the artwork speak for itself. This is a Solaris album, but we wanted everything else to speak for itself. So
yeah, there's nothing wrong with it. Like the album, as I said, looked completely fine. It's just when you were doing the jigsaw piece showing the cover and then the title came up in the corner.
Why
that
was 100% intentional though. Like we love a good tease. We like stretching it out because our point of view is that what, guys, like we've been sitting on this music for like a year and a half. We've been trying to put together a really fun promotional release. We're gonna have fun with it. You can wait 5 days. We've waited like 400 days to reveal this kind of stuff to you. And yeah, for sure, like the last puzzle piece was obvious. We wanted to say the last puzzle piece as like the name of the album, right? And like the big chunk of the image. But yeah, so I'm really happy with it. I think everyone else is liking it a lot. We haven't gotten really a lot of negative feedback about it, so that was nice.
Oh,
So yeah, I don't know if you got any other questions, but
it's just basically wrapping up now. You haven't originally, like, I don't think you have, but you haven't given a release date for this album yet, have you?
Not officially. We haven't announced anything
It is hidden though,
really super official, but we have announced our CD release show in London, Ontario. We will be playing Rum Runners, London, Ontario, December 17th, and that will be the day we release the album. That is
fine. Because you showed the store where to buy the CD, and it's like, oh well, it will ship this day. Like, oh, well, now I know.
Yeah, we're gonna do the pre-order stuff. And we're gonna try to ship those out a couple days earlier than the actual release date. But yeah, I think the release date we tentatively settled on December 17th, Friday.
Right, so now everyone knows.
Yeah, and we'll be announcing that officially on our social media platforms shortly. We just wanted to kind of marinate and like ease into it and see how our videos started doing, and we just wanted to make sure that we reached like a peak amount of whatever the peak is. I don't know, maybe it might not be as high as Darkest Days. Who knows? You never know how this stuff goes in the music industry, but like we just want to make sure we get our analytics as high as we possibly can before we then go, hey, by the way, here's a link, pre-order our album. We could really use the support, right? So yeah, we just haven't, it's not really like a secret. It's just more like we haven't used it as like a big ta-da moment in our promotional material yet. But yeah, December 17th, Dance with Tragedy will be available worldwide on all streaming platforms. And we'll see physical copies. We'll see if we can accommodate that as well. But we are an independent band, and we've had experiences using services in the past that haven't quite panned out and have, unfortunately alienated fans because we weren't able to make up for the bad service. And so we're going to try to do it ourselves this time around. We're going to try to do like a proper mailing routine, and we'll see how that works out. And we ask everyone just be patient with us. We're trying our hardest to distribute our music the best way that everyone can enjoy it, including people who want physical copies. I'm one of those people. I love having a physical copy of an album. There's just something nostalgic about it. There's something real about it that nothing beats in all my life. Like nothing beats the feeling of producing an album and then holding it in your hands, being like, this is it. So I imagine a lot of people like that feeling as a listener as well. So yeah, so that's all I got to say on the release date.
Yeah, and so buying the physical discs as well has changed slightly as well, because before I had to just send you a private message to get it. As for this time, you actually got a site. It seems.
We're trying to put together our own way of doing things, and we're trying to, I don't know, maybe in the future, if we ever decide to like sign with a label or anything like that, maybe they'll take on that responsibility. But until then, we're trying to create a better one-stop shop. We're just trying to be more business savvy about this one. The first two albums were fun because they were just, hey, let's just make music and throw it out there and see what happens. But the story of every band is you go long enough, you have to keep the lights on somehow, right? You have to make the juice worth the squeeze. And we've now gotten to that point where it's like, okay, let's start doing this a little more real. Let's see if we can start generating making it more accessible for people to get our stuff, so that we can actually start funding this thing properly. And Yeah, and and that's what we have to do to keep the lights on. And unfortunately, it is a fate that a lot of bands suffer as they get to a point where they just the process itself kills the band. Like the process itself, the band can't sustain. It can't financially keep things in order. Um, it ends up costing way too much money to produce something that not enough people buy. And fortunately, Solaris hasn't got to that point yet, and pray it never will. But you know, only time will tell. And it's the support of people like yourself who pre-order the album and everything that really that is the best way to support a band, is like literally fronting money saying like, when this is out, give it to me. And it allows us a lot more wiggle room and a lot more capabilities to produce what you guys want. And in an age of do-it-yourself musicianship, it's pretty essential.
Yeah, well, I definitely know I'm going to be pre-ordering the album, probably even a T-shirt, because this album is just on such a huge next level. I would like to just own that kind of part of history of just what I've been doing with you guys and the bands, and just marking it as well. So
Yeah.
just get everything I can, and I hope everyone else does it as well, because everyone listening, Solaris should definitely be supported. They need to be far bigger than what they are. I want them to come to the UK, and I can't do that by myself. So please get them enough money to get over here so I can see them properly. And for all the fans and everything, like, you have no idea what you're in for. This album is next level and far beyond that as well. Just an
Thank you, man.
incredible album. You got no idea what you're in for. So that is pretty much the end of it now.
All right. Well, thanks for having me, man. It was a lot of fun. I know we went for quite a long time here. I kind of prefer the long form podcast, kind of
Yeah,
back
that's
and
me.
forth. But yeah, thanks so much for having me. It was a pleasure to talk about this album after such a long-winded wait.
Yeah. And it's great to finally hear it myself. And for everyone else, you're going to be amazed. I don't see why anyone would prefer the others. This album is just so much better.
Yeah,
Absolutely superior. Brilliant. So
awesome.
that is it. And I'll see everyone in my next video. And um, Solaris December 17th then to hear the album.
Correct.
So let's call it there. Bye,
Cheers.
everyone.